Can a property market that's doubled in 5 years keep growing? Most people would say no. For example, they look at Adelaide's price growth, and with certain areas up over 16% in just the last 12 months alone, they'd assume the party's over. But then people said the same thing last year, and those people who chose to do nothing missed out on $74,500 in growth. Now, I've been investing around Australia for 23 years, and I've helped over 500 investors navigate markets like this over the last 9 years. And what I've learned is that when everyone thinks a market is done, that's often when the real opportunity begins. Because while most investors are chasing the next big thing, they're missing out on what's actually happening in Adelaide right now. The combination of factors driving this market forwards are still firmly in place. And if you wait for prices to drop before you act, you're going to watch from the sidelines again as Adelaide delivers another year of strong growth. So today, I'm going to walk you through the real drivers behind Adelaide's continued price growth, why this market is different from typical boom and bust cycles, and the specific data that shows why this is likely the cheapest Adelaide property prices will ever be. Most people hear that Adelaide prices have doubled and they assume, it's no longer affordable, prices are going to crash. They think the affordability advantage is gone. Even many of our clients were skeptical when we recommended Adelaide, but every single time, just like this client, they are surprised by how well they do. You see, if you look into the data, Adelaide is still relatively affordable compared to Sydney, Brisbane, even many pockets of Melbourne. I mean, you can still buy houses close to the beach for under $1 million in Adelaide. That doesn't exist in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane anymore. So people are still being attracted to Adelaide because of its relative affordability. They're making the move because they can get so much more for their money. And as long as Adelaide remains significantly cheaper than these other capital cities, that interstate migration, it's going to continue, and it will continue to push prices up. So if you're thinking about buying in Adelaide, focus on areas that still offer this affordability advantage, particularly properties near good infrastructure that are priced, say, between $750K to $1 million. Now, I've compiled all my years of experience investing around Australia into a free checklist that covers the essential factors you need to evaluate before investing anywhere in Australia, whether it's Adelaide or any other market. This checklist will help you identify genuine opportunities and avoid costly mistakes. You can grab this totally for free using the link in the description below. And this brings me to something really important about who is actually buying in Adelaide. Many investors, they seem to look at Adelaide and they dismiss it because it's not considered an investor hotspot. They assume that if other investors aren't piling in, then they shouldn't consider Adelaide. But here's why I actually love that Adelaide is not an investor hotspot, because that means price growth, it's being driven by owner-occupier demand. These are real people moving to Adelaide and buying properties to live in. Now, this is incredibly important because owner-occupied markets, they're more sustainable, more stable when it comes to growth than investor-driven markets. You're not dealing with speculative buying or investors who might all exit at once. These people, they're making life decisions, not just investment decisions. And historically, owner-occupied driven markets have delivered more consistent long-term growth. So when you're looking at Adelaide properties, target areas and property types that appeal to owner-occupiers in those suburbs. These will continue to have strong demand because you're tapping into the same market that's driving Adelaide's growth. Now, if you're investing in Adelaide, you might be wondering about rental demand. And this is where things get really interesting because people assume that because Adelaide's rental market, it doesn't get the same headlines as Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane, or even Perth, it must be easier to rent properties there. They think the rental crisis there isn't as severe. I mean, I spoke to someone recently who's trying to actually find a rental property in Sydney, And she said that for every potential property she visited just last weekend, there were like 20 or 30 people vying for that one property. And many real estate agents actually told her that this was actually a quiet weekend. Yep, seeing 20 or 30 prospective tenants for one property is a quiet weekend by Sydney standards. So if you live in Sydney, you probably already know how severe the shortage is when it comes to renting a property. But here's where things get interesting. The data shows that rental vacancy rates in Adelaide are 50% lower than Sydney. Let me say that again. Adelaide has a greater shortage of rental properties than Sydney does. So if Sydney's rental market is in a crisis, Adelaide is an absolute emergency. This means that if you buy an investment property in Adelaide, getting it rented is incredibly easy, especially if you know what type of property to target. You're entering a market with severe undersupply of rental properties and strong demand. This rental shortage also means you can be selective with tenants and achieve strong rental returns. So when you're evaluating properties in Adelaide, factor in that your property will likely rent quickly and your rents will rise rapidly. And that rental demand, it's not slowing down anytime soon because of what's happening with Adelaide's population. People often look at Adelaide's population and think it's too small to support continued price growth. They assume that only the major capitals like Sydney and Melbourne with massive population growth via overseas migration, only those areas can deliver strong returns. But Adelaide's population growth is very strong and it's expected to exceed 2 million people by 2035. That's significant growth. And Adelaide, it ranks high for livability, which is exactly what's attracting people there. They're getting a capital city lifestyle, but with better affordability, less traffic, less congestion, and strong infrastructure and amenities. This combination of population growth and livability creates a perfect storm for sustained property demand. So when choosing where to invest in Adelaide, look at areas that are positioned to benefit from this population growth, suburbs with good infrastructure, new developments, and areas that are going to attract people to come and live there. These will see the strongest capital growth as their population continues to surge. Now, there's another group fueling Adelaide's demand that many people overlook. I see investors often ignore what first home buyers are doing. They think that they're not relevant to investment decisions. They've often bought into the narrative that first home buyers are being priced out or that they only compete in like the cheapest suburbs. But here's why first home buyers matter in Adelaide. South Australia's price points make the federal government's first home buy incentive schemes incredibly beneficial. Recent data shows there's actually been an unexpected market shift with more loan approvals for property in Adelaide. What does that mean? That shows you that demand is strong and growing. First home buyers can actually afford to enter the market in Adelaide with the government support. Unlike, for example, in Sydney, where the price caps essentially are too low for many people to actually buy their first home. So South Australia's price point being attractive to first home buyers, that's creating another layer of sustained demand in Adelaide that's only going to keep pushing prices up. So consider properties that appeal to both first home buyers as well as investors. Typically, maybe newer properties or certainly well-maintained family homes in family-friendly areas. These properties benefit from multiple buyer demographics, which means stronger demand if you decide to sell at some point down the track. And here's where everything I've just told you comes together to create the perfect opportunity, because people see rising prices and they assume more supply will flood the market to meet demand. They think developers will just build more, prices will stabilize, but the opposite is actually happening. Listings are down. The number of properties available for sale right now in Adelaide compared to 12 months ago have dropped, and they've been dropping since 2019. And it gets worse. Building approvals are also falling, so there's not enough new supply coming through either. Now, think about what this actually means. You've got surging demand from owner-occupiers, interstate migrants, first home buyers, and investors. And at the same time, supply is falling. In economics, when demand increases but supply falls, prices go up. It's that simple. So this supply crunch is exactly why you need to act now. In a nutshell, based on the data, this is the cheapest prices in Adelaide will ever be. Of course, different suburbs will perform differently. Not every property is going to deliver the same returns. So if you want help to identify the best areas to invest in, what properties to target, then we're offering a totally free strategy call for investors who want to invest and just want some help so they don't get it wrong. If that's you, you can book a free call with a member of my team using the link in the description below. So now you understand why Adelaide isn't done growing yet by any stretch. But I want to ask you a question. Do you know how to identify which specific properties and which specific areas will deliver the best returns for you? If the answer is no, then watch this video next where I reveal the 7 signs that your property will double in value fast. Because in a strong market like Adelaide, the right property in the right location can deliver extraordinary results.